Hello guys and welcome back. In the last section we got some data from the JSON placeholder users API. Now in this section we'll also post some data to the API, put or edit some data onto the API and then delete some data as well. Okay, so we'll make all these three calls now. Okay, so to do that I'll add three buttons. So let's say in the user details component right below this, I'll just get rid of the user address right now. I don't really need that, just wanted to show it to you guys. After placing a horizontal rule, I'll create four buttons here. Okay, so I'll create a button. To do that, I can simply type in btn with a class of btn and btn primary. Okay, and I need these buttons like 4 times or so. Oh, my bad. I have to multiply it by 4. Okay, so I got 4 buttons now. First one is button primary. Second one would be button. Let's say first one is button success. Second one is button primary. Third one is button danger, and the final one is button warning. Okay, this will create user. This will update user. This will delete user, and this will get posts by user. Okay, now these are all the functionalities that we now need to implement. So I'll create methods for these. Create user. I'll just copy this one. Update user. Delete user. And finally get user posts. Okay, I'll now use these methods. I'll have to define them in the TypeScript class. So I'll open up the TypeScript class and right below the ng on init, I'll name these classes like so. Okay, I'll name these methods like that. Okay, now in the create user, I want to call a method on user service. So I'll name it. Let's first create these methods in the user service so that we could directly call them up here. So I'll open up the user service and let's start with the create user call. So create user, this is going to receive a user which is of type iUser. Okay, and then this is going to return an observable of type user that was created. Okay, now this will return this dot http dot. Now since we need to post some data to an API, we'll be using the post method, and this again should return user a response of type iUser wrapped inside an observable. So now this dot root URL is going to be our URL, but the post method here accepts another argument named body. Okay, and this is the argument that we'll specify here like so. Okay, this also accepts other arguments, but we'll not have a look at them right now. Okay, so this is how you can create a post request. Let's also create a method named update user, and this will get a user iUser, and then this is the signature of it is essentially the same as that of this. So I'll just copy and paste that and I'll get rid of the create user. Now instead of post, I'll be using put. Okay, that's how you can send out an update request to an API. And then finally we have a delete user method. So delete user, it's going to receive an ID this time, which is of type number. Okay, and then instead of post, it's going to call the delete method and will simply pass in the URL specified by the ID. So I'll wrap this inside backticks, and here we'll specify $/ the ID of the user that we want to delete. So we have all these 4 methods right now with us. We can simply call them inside this method right here. So this dot create user, and to this we'll pass this dot user. Okay, that we got here, and then we can also subscribe to this, since this is going to return to me an observable. Now I'll get a user if the creation operation was successful. So then I can simply log, or let's say alert, a new user was created with an ID, and we can simply print the ID of a user like so. Okay, expected 0 arguments but got 2. Okay, alert does not really receive 2 arguments, so I'll just cut it from here, and instead of using this I'll use a backtick syntax. I'll cut this and then paste it like so. It might also receive an error, so I'll just alert the error. So got an error as error, and if this gets completed, I won't receive any argument, but I can then alert creation of user completed like so. Okay, so the create user is done with. Now I can go to the application here, fetch of users completed. Okay, so if I fetch of users completed, so if I click on I'll just open up the network tab as well so that we could see what's going on there. So if I click on create user, a user's call is going, but with a 500 error, got an error. So let's see what the error was. It says that insert failed duplicate ID, and why is it saying that? Because we simply used this user that was retrieved from the get users call. Okay, and a user of that particular ID already exists, and ideally this ID is something that should be generated by the API itself and not by us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the user ID to null so that we don't really get an error. Okay, we did get an error, and that's why this method was called, the second callback function to it. Okay, and that's what alerted the got an error this thing to us. Okay, now this dot user dot id equal to null, that is something I'll specify, and then if I save this now and go back to the application to create it, click on create user, and this time I should get a 201 response, and got this message, a new user was created with an ID of 11. Okay, that's what was printed by this alert right here. That is the alert that was inside the first callback function to the subscribe method. Okay, so when this call is successful, then the first callback, that is the next callback, gets called. If there is an error, then the second callback is called. Okay, now once the second callback is called, okay, and if I click on OK, the call is essentially, or the subscribe or the observable is essentially complete. So the complete text, this one, creation of user completed, should also be alerted. So if I click on OK, then it will also alert creation of user completed. Okay, now if I go to the request that was sent in the headers, you'll see that the request method was post, okay, and the status code was 201 created, okay, and this was the request payload that we sent out. Let me just zoom it a bit more so that you guys can see properly. And so this was the request body, and this is the response that we got from the API. So this was again something that we sent out to it, but this is the ID that was newly created right here. Okay, let's also quickly call the update user method and then see what gets printed onto the screen. So I'll just change a few things in here. I'll simply copy this code here and change, say, the ID. I'll not change the ID though, but I'll just change the user's name to, say, Sam folder. And again, this is not user service, it's user dot, let's say, email. Let's change this to sam.folder@example.com, and then we'll send it the user a new use. So the user was updated. That's the only thing that we're going to print right now. Got an error, and updation of a user completed. So if I save this and go back to the application, I'll see a lot of alerts here. If I click on update user, it's going to send out a request, but now we got an error 500. Let's see. It says that insert field duplicate ID. Okay, what could possibly, okay, so I used the create user method while copying and pasting it, so I should change it to update user instead of that. Okay, now if I click on the update user button, then I got 404. Let's see. Okay, so I'll have to specify an ID as well while calling the update user, because that is something that can be seen here as well, because for put requests I should specify an ID. So since I did not specify any ID, it returned to me an error. So I should make changes to my update user method to specify the ID as well. So I'll just wrap this like so. And I will use the user.id in here instead. Let's save this and see what happens in this case now. If I click on update user again, I got an error here. ID is not defined, it says. Let's click on the update user again. Okay, let's see if the app is still running without any errors. Let's just break the console here for a bit and reload the application. So it got reloaded now. Let's go back to the application and see. Let's clear the network tab here and click on the update user button. So the user was updated, it says. Let's and the updation of the user completed also, so the observable got completed as well. Now if we see the request here, it was a put request, and the data that we sent here was email of Sam Kolder like this, and the name was also Sam Kolder. So if I go back to the preview and see, this was the response that we got. So the email was updated to Sam Kolder, and the name was also updated to Sam Kolder, and that's something that is updated here as well. Okay, so far so good. Let's also use the delete method here. So I'll go back to the user details, and in here I'll use the delete method. Instead of update user, I'll use delete user, and to that I'll pass the user ID like so, and then the user was deleted, got an error as and deletion of user completed. Let's save this, and we got the users. Now if I click on delete user, then it should say that the user was deleted because and the deletion of user completed. This is because we sent out a delete request, but the status code was okay. So this is treated as a success status code, and that's why we got the user was deleted thing and the deletion of user completed. Okay, so that's how you can use the delete method. Okay, now apart from that, you can also do things like send out HTTP headers. So say for example, if you wanted to send a header in the GET request, so that you could just tell the API that you are authorized. Okay, and if you used OAuth, so if you wanted to send an authorization header with a bearer and an access token appended to that string, then you can use things like HTTP headers for that purpose. You'll have to import HTTP headers from Angular common HTTP, and then let's say in the case of the get users via REST, I wanted to use that HTTP header. So I'll create an instance of the HTTP header, new HTTP headers. Okay, and to this I'm just going to call a set method. I'll set the authorization header. This set method takes two arguments, both of them are string. So first one would be the name of the header, that is authorization in this case, and the value of it would be bearer and your access token here, like so. And then to this get method I can pass this as a options, and in this options as a header, so headers like so. Okay, and since this essentially is ES6, we are writing it in ES6, and in ES6 if the key and the value, the name of both the keys and values is same, then you don't really have to specify it two times like so. You can simply get rid of this and you can specify it like this. Okay, so now if I save this and go back to the application, let it reload, I'll specify okay here, and if you see, then there should be a request header section wherein you'll see the authorization header with a bearer, your access token here. Okay, so this is how you can add authorization headers as well, or other types of headers as well to your request. Okay, by creating an instance of HTTP headers, calling a set method on it, and passing your name of your header here and the value of your header there, and then passing it as a second argument wrapped inside an object to the http.get method. Now again, if you wanted to specify some query parameters for a particular request, then you can do that as well. So say for example, there is an API here that says that we can get the posts of a particular user by specifying their user ID. Okay, so if I select this API, then it should return to me all the posts in which the user ID was 1. Okay, so I can do the same thing for other users as well. So I have already implemented the get post by user button here. Let's implement a method that is going to get all those posts for us. So get user posts is going to be the name of this method that will take a number as an argument, which would be the ID, and then in case of this it will return to us an observable. I'm not really adding an interface for the posts here, so I'll specify this as any. Okay, and then this is going to return to me this dot http dot get. In this get, I will specify the API that I wanted to use. This is the API. Okay, I'll add this to the URL at the top like so. I'll change this. I'll not specify this user ID equal to 1 separated by question mark here, because the ID can be anything, right? So instead of specifying it like this, I'll specify it as an HTTP parameter. So to do that, I'll have to import HttpParams from Angular common HTTP, and then in here we'll specify this as root posts URL, and then in this method here we'll just use this dot root posts URL, and then again to this I'll pass params, this argument right here. Okay, so let's do that. Params. Okay, we'll have to create params though, so I'll create that. And to use params, we'll have to do the same thing that we did for headers. So I'll call a set method on it. I'll pass params. This will be the user ID, and the user ID will be the ID that we receive here. Okay, now this ID is in the form of a number, but we want it as a string here, so I'll call a toString method on this to convert it into a string, and then I can simply pass it as a param here. Okay, now this is going to return to me an array of posts. Okay, but I don't really have an interface for that, so I'll just simply get the posts here. Okay, and I'll specify its type as any right now. Now in here I can use another thing. There's a pipe that is exported by Angular. Okay, the name of that pipe is async, so I can use the async pipe. Okay, what this pipe does is it unwraps the value that is wrapped inside an observable or a promise in this posts. Okay, once I get that, I can simply pass it through the JSON pipe, so it will convert those objects into a stringified JSON response, and then I can print it inside a pre-tag like so. Okay, so I'll cut this pre-tag here and paste it here, and let's say users posts in an h4 tag like so. Let's save this and go back. Okay, if I click on get posts by user, I'll probably have to get user posts. Okay, I didn't define this method call here, so I'll do that. Get user service dot get user posts. This accepts this dot user dot id, and then I'll simply do this dot posts equal to this. Now this is going to return to me an observable of type any that would be assigned to posts, and then I can simply unwrap the value that this posts had using the async pipe, and then eventually passing it through the JSON pipe. So if I go to the application here, I'll see that the users posts is null right now, but if I click on get posts by users, I'll get all the posts here. Okay, and as you can see in the request, the user ID was added automatically by the HTTP params that we used. It wasn't manually did by me. Okay, so this is how you can basically create any type of CRUD operation functionality inside your application if you're leveraging a third-party API for data. a RESTful API for data. Okay, and this is also how you can add query parameters and HTTP headers to your requests. Okay, so this was all regarding the HTTP client. Now in the next section we'll talk this was all that we did in this section. In the next video we'll talk about observables, and then how we can, what exactly are the differences between an observable and a promise, and how we can use subjects to share data between two components, whether related or not, uh, whether related or not related. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.